the flowering of their creative potential or something like that. And fair enough, because there is something remarkable about the potential that you see in children, but they're also, wild and unconstrained in their activity. And so that possibility has to be harnessed in some sense. And I think the right way, again, to conceptualize that is not so much that the child is moving outward and trying to be creative and free, and all society does is constrain that in some sort of patriarchal or tyrannical manner. I think that's a suboptimal solution. I think what you do instead is you channel that creative possibility into something like well-regulated games. And a game has to operate by principles and has to have a certain degree of predictability, right? So there's some order there. But if you have your disciplinary routines optimized, then much of what governs the household is something like play. And I can make a technical case for that. So children of 2 years old, they really can't play with other children. And by the time a child is 2, he can or she can do something like play with a truck, right? It's a very abstract thing to do because a little toy truck, that's not a truck, right? That's a representation of a truck. And when the child is playing at driving the truck, they're not driving a truck. They're formulating a very complex representation of the world and acting out a potential role. It's very sophisticated. When a girl plays with a doll too, she's not playing with a baby, obviously. She's practicing doing that. And that's very sophisticated. But 2-year-olds, they really can't play together. And the great developmental psychologist Jean Piaget made much of this. He was a real genius because Piaget was the first person who really understood that the proper basis of social order is play. And that the reason children play is because they're practicing taking their optimal place in the social order. It's crucially important. And then any social order that isn't predicated on the spirit of play is suboptimal. And that's also very much worth knowing. If you're a business person, a good one, you pretty much only want to enter into business arrangements with people who can play, fundamentally, because otherwise you have to connive or use force or, get paranoid about whether or not they're holding up their end of the bargain. And it's so dull and it's counterproductive. What you really want is you want to have something to offer, something valuable, and you want to go to someone and you say, look, this is what I've got. And they say, well, this is what I've got. And then you say, well, look, if we put the two things we've got together, here's a bunch of things we could do that would really be good, and that would be good for both of us, and in a way that we couldn't do apart. That's a pretty good deal, so it's probably worth a bit of time and effort. So back to the 2-year-olds. They can't play together. So maybe you put two 2-year-olds in a room, and maybe they both want to play with the truck. They'll fight. And maybe one wants to play with the truck and one wants to play with a doll, let's say, and then they'll play side by side. And if you're a casual observer, you think the kids are playing together, but they're not. They're just in the same room. They're not playing together until they're playing the same game. And that really doesn't start to happen until they're about 3. And when they're about 3, and this is where pretend play really starts to dawn, mutual pretend play, they'll do things, they engage in dramatic play, they'll do things like a boy and a girl, they'll say to each other, do you want to play house? It's a pretty bloody fundamental question when it gets right down to it. You're going to be asking women that for the rest of your life, badly or well, and you might not know that that's what you're doing. And in which case you're probably doing it badly. But that is what you're doing, and so kids are practicing that, and the rule is the girl has to want to play. That's a good rule. You could stamp that